Okay, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sue Fulton. I was going to introduce myself, but we're not spending that kind of time. Tonight we're talking about this new series, Boots, a look at Marine Corps boot camp in 1990, in case you didn't pick this up, while being gay in the military was still illegal. It's an extraordinary telling of an extraordinary time that nevertheless is relatable to everyone who's ever felt that they didn't fit in. And I just want to, from Alan Sepinwall's very nice review today, this is primarily Cameron's story. But Boots also functions well as an ensemble piece, telling us enough about the other recruits and their varied motivations for enlisting to make their stories interesting, even when they don't directly intersect with the hero. So if your appetite hasn't been whetted enough by that one, you definitely want to keep watching. Now let's give a big welcome to the panel. Andy Parker. Andy Parker, the creator, co-showrunner, and executive producer. Jennifer Cecil, showrunner and executive producer. Miles Heizer, who plays recruit Cameron Coach. And Leon Ingleright, military advisor, a Marine Corps veteran and graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. And since they're still locking up, I have time as a West Point graduate to disrespect the U.S. Naval Academy as a second-tier academy. Sorry, I'm by law required to do that. Welcome. Okay, we don't have a ton of time. Andy, how did you connect with Cameron's story? What drew you to this project?
Yeah, so this all began with Greg Cope-White's beautiful memoir, The Pink Marine, and Sony was looking for somebody to adapt that memoir into a television show, and they sent me the book, and I instantly connected with it. There was a time when I was a closeted gay teenager in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, and I invited a Marine Corps recruiter over to my house to talk to my parents about why it would be a good idea for me to go join the Marines. And I did not end up taking that path. Ultimately, I think I realized that that was me trying to run away from something and prove something. And so that's not the path I took. But when I got Greg's book, it was very much like reading about the path not taken. And that was something I could deeply connect with and understand. And then I had a conversation with Greg about saying, like, I'm not gonna adapt your life exactly. I need the freedom to create a new character and build an ensemble around that. And Greg has been nothing but gracious in supporting that and championing that. So that's where Cameron was born, and that's where the show came from.
I love that. I mean, folks like Greg and Leon and I knew each other back in the battle for Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and this just resonates so much with us. Jennifer, in your mind, what makes Boots different from other coming-of-age stories on television?
Well, primarily because there is so much more at stake for these boys. I mean, this isn't a show that's just about, will I go to prom? You know, is somebody mad at me? These people are dealing with life and death stakes, and they're learning how to kill people and go into war possibly. But oddly, the biggest way that this is different from any other coming of age story is the time we're living in right now. It was not planned that this show would come out at such a fraught time in history for LGBTQ rights and for transgender folks in the military, but we're here with it, and it's an extraordinary opportunity, I'm hoping, for people to watch this show and see the humanity behind all of these recruits, understand that the military isn't just some monolith, that it's made up of these individual boys who are striving and trying and to find themselves, and it has more resonance than any other coming of age show. It just does.
Yeah, that makes sense. Miles Heizer. What attracted you to this role? And have you ever played a character before who was based on a real person?
I have not, which was obviously completely mortifying and terrifying going into it. But I remember getting the audition for this, and you get audition after audition, and I see this breakdown of like the jock or like Sarah's boyfriend or whatever, and I got this. It was like gay loser. I'm like, I might be able to book this one. And I remember reading the script, and it was like truly unlike any script I'd ever read before, and I was completely fell in love with it. Like Andy's pilot was just so good. I was genuinely like laughing. I just had so many connections to it. And one thing I love about it is that Cameron's arc really isn't about his sexuality. We sort of enter the story as like, he's gay, he is completely fine with it. You know, he has this best friend who supports him and uplifts him, and the story sort of happens after that. And as a Wilson Phillips fan, I wanted to authentically portray one on film, so that was also exciting. But yeah, I mean, it's just truly unlike any other show had ever seen, and I was so excited about it and tried not to get my hopes up, but here we are.
Here we are. And then the Marine on your other side, Leon, tell us a little bit about your history, and then come back to your feelings about this project.
Sure. So yeah, a little bit. I'll do my best.
I will cut you off, and we know what you're going to walk out.
Of course. So yeah, I mean, this story really does kind of parallel a lot of kind of what I went through. As a kid growing up in rural areas with a strict Catholic upbringing, I wasn't able to consider that I was gay, but I mean, deep down I knew, and it was just one of those things that. But I was that weak kid in high school. I was the one that got bullied. I was the one that was always pushed around. And joining the Marine Corps for me was almost exactly kind of what you saw on the screen there. That was like my chance to change, to become somebody else. And that's what it was for me. But there was an aspect to, even though I didn't know, I wouldn't admit to myself that I was gay, I still, like, throughout my service, in its various forms, always still felt isolated. Like, I had something to hide. And that really kind of shaped, like, just kind of my whole experience of relating with, my counterparts, other people I was working with, and so forth. And eventually, I did go to the Naval Cadet Prep School and the Naval Academy, and was commissioned to Second Lieutenant in the Marine Corps. And then sometime shortly after that, when I finally did admit to myself that I was gay and started to come out, I got found out and got outed and left the Marine Corps.
Well, I will say,
Yeah.
seriously, and on behalf of this audience, thank you for your service, and I'm sorry that happened. Thank you.
Regarding the show, what really kind of, like I said, when I saw this, it was like, this is my story, and as well as much as other folks that I have talked to over the years who have been in the same predicament, and I realized that, like, if this was going to be taken seriously, I knew it had to be authentic as possible, and I knew that I had that knowledge and experience that I could offer, and I jumped at the chance. And it's been nothing short of amazing, and yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just speak to that? So
Sure, absolutely.
authenticity was.
I talked to Greg about this. You asked me what other military movies I thought of, right?
I was going to say that. So.
And you were going to ask me, and you said Full Metal Jacket, right? And I was actually thinking about it later, and really more Private Benjamin, honestly.
Yeah. So I pitched the show as Full Metal Jacket as told by David Sedaris. So there's been so much iconic media about the military. But it seemed to me the only reason to go back into that context to see that world again was through this queer perspective, through this gay character. And then if we were going to do that, it just felt like we had to tell the story in a different way. The bleak, harrowing, washed out look of it, like of these other iconic films, like we didn't want to replicate that. This had to feel fresh and new and vibrant, right down to the colors, to the soundtrack. Everything needed to feel like a different way in to this world, and that's where a lot of the tonal conversations came from. So it was on the page, and then every decision we made in terms of how this was going to come together was based on getting that tone just right.
It was, I mean, I loved what I was doing. I loved the Marine Corps. I loved being a Marine. And everybody who came into the Marine Corps, we all sacrificed something about ourselves to become part of something greater. And that's what prevailed in my mind, I think, more than anything, more than, you know, the injustice of not being able to be out and open. I really felt I was sharing the same experience with, you know, everybody. That was universal. Everybody gave up something to be there.
Yeah, Miles, I want to ask you about that too. Do you resonate with that, having had, you know, gone through this project? What do you think about that?
I mean, I started acting when I was 10, so I've been doing it my entire life, and I remember as I got older and was so gay, everyone was like, he's gay. I started to be like, I don't know what this is gonna mean for my career, because at the time, you know, there weren't very many out gay actors. If there were, they sort of didn't work much, and there were hardly any roles for queer people. And it really took up like so much mind space for me. Like I was already stressed about being gay and sort of what that would look like for my family, and then on top of it, I'm like, does this mean that it's gonna hit a point where suddenly I'm like, can't work anymore? And I had conversations like with my representation, if you would, like my literally gay agent, and she basically was like, you can't say it. So we had these talks where she was like, this is the reality, is like, you're probably gonna get put into a box, or you can play like I did an audition for a gay character, and it'd be like, you know, if you do something like this, it has the potential to change sort of what else you're able to do. And it's like, it's pretty wild that truly in like the last 5 years, I feel like so much has changed. And like when I tell you this show is completely mind-blowing to me, like if I could tell myself when I'm little, like, you'll be like out and happy and you'll be able to work and be a part of like a really good show on a huge streaming platform. It's like, it's really so crazy to me, and I'm just so grateful that that's where we are right now. Obviously there's so much progress to be made, but I hope that we're sort of on a path forward where we can tell more queer stories.
And to that point, and Jennifer touched on this already, so Andy, I want to ask you, I mean, we got, in 2011, we got Don't Ask, Don't Tell repealed. In 2016, we got the ban on transgender service lifted. We thought this work was done. And I know, you know, when you started working on this project, you had no idea we'd be where we are today. What do you think about, I mean, or did you anticipate we might be in a place like this, or, you know, and how do you deal with that?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know.
What do you hope for?
Yeah, the show is entering the cultural conversation at a very fraught, interesting moment. The show is not a polemic, but I think it is, just because of its plea for empathy. Now even that is political. So it is political in that sense. But what I hope more than anything is that what the show is doing is showing a human cost to these policies, what it does emotionally, psychologically, spiritually to the people who have to live through these policies, but also how it corrupts the organizations, the institutions, the structures that persist in that discrimination. And I think the show has something to say about that as the season goes on.
Yeah, and when we talk about how it affects people, Leon, in my experience, knowing a lot of gay service members, I saw a lot of different ways that people dealt with having to keep their identity, and there were different strategies for different people. And over the season, we see some of that. Was that your experience in the Marines?
Yes, actually. And it's kind of funny because I feel like I kind of went, all over the spectrum. I started out being very paranoid, and when I even finally admitted to myself that I was gay, I was already 9 years into my career. Now I was an officer, and I was in I realized it was a very precarious place, and yeah. So at first I was really just like very paranoid about everything and anything of anybody knowing. And it was, I was very careful about conversations. I was very careful about, what I said, where I went, who I was with. And it was only over time even that I started kind of like building up the courage to kind of try to reach out or seek out, even just other gay folks and try to like explore that part of myself. Over time, I ended up discovering some of the, I guess I call it the gay Marine underground of while I was at Camp Lejeune there, and finally found like people that I knew understood where I was coming from, and so from that, like at that point, I guess I relaxed a little bit more, and I guess unfortunately I relaxed a little bit too much at one point. I did end up getting out ultimately, but yeah, there was, everybody I knew in that underground group, we all knew we were in the same, situation, and we were all very protective of each other, and so it was like the one place I felt like I actually, had real support, real understanding.
Yeah, and I resonate with that. The lesbian community in the army in Germany was extraordinary. So,
She said with a twinkle in her eye.
Saturday night at the Frankfurt Lesbian Bar. I'm lying. It wasn't Saturday night. It was early Sunday morning. So, this is a question for all the panelists. Actually, I'm going to start at that end with Leon and come this way. What message about identity and finding your place in the world would you hope viewers take away from Boots?
I hope that in the atmosphere that we're in today, that the viewers will see this and remember the human faces and the human lives behind those uniforms and behind everything, and that it's our humanity that's what makes us strong. That's where our real strength is. It's not a weakness.
Thank you.
Very similarly, I feel like when the show starts, Cameron comes in and he has this conversation with his inner self, he says, "I'm the only one who has to hide," and he says, "You think you're the only one here who's hiding something?" And I feel like that's sort of what the core of the show is like, it's easy to come into this through Cameron's perspective because the thing he's hiding is illegal and has high stakes, but everyone there is hiding from something, and has a fear of not being accepted or not belonging. And I think that, when you're put in this heightened environment and those things sort of fall out the window, you're just sort of left with people, and they end up connecting in ways that they didn't expect that they would be able to when that fear goes away. So my hope would just be that they see that, and also I like the portrayal of the queer characters as just showing them as people who are making this truly immeasurable sacrifice in theory, and that they really are just people, and to tell them that they can't do that because of their gender or their sexuality is pretty inhumane. So yeah, I as he said, I hope it just shows the humanity of everyone.
Thank you, Miles. That's good. Jennifer?
Wow, they had the two really good answers. So
I just
and next
took
time
the
slip me money to
answers
start
I've
at the
heard
other
him
end.
say.
For me, a thing I really hope audiences take from this is after I have seen the show several times. I mean, in post, Andy and I are looking at minute scenes over and over and over again, and then watching it all in one fell swoop. I was surprised to find myself feeling hope, because the story that's being told is about how our differences do not have to separate us, that these people come in for all sorts of different reasons, people who should never be friends, and committing to something bigger than themselves makes them look at people a different way. That's something that I'm desperately holding on to right now in these times, that we can look at people, we can find some kind of common ground. And that made me feel hopeful for the show. That's what I want people to take away.
So this was Norman Lear's last project, and when I talked to Norman about why I would want to adapt this book and be part of the show, I said, one of the things I think this is about is who gets to be counted as an American, who gets to be included in that story. And I feel like Norman's work, if you look at the amazing, groundbreaking shows over the decades that he made television, there was a consistent theme of expanding the definition of who gets to be included in that narrative, in that story. So what I hope is that we have somehow lived up to the legacy that he set artistically in carrying on that theme. I hope that this show is ultimately about expanding the definition of who gets to be included in this story.
Oh, wow, thank you.
All right, so just to wrap up, as an Army veteran, Marine Corps, one of the top two branches in the military, or the second best branch in the military? I'm just kidding. Let's give a big thank you to our panel today.